Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled about the topic we've got lined up for you today. We usually think of the democratization of knowledge as this strictly modern concept, right? Like something sparked by the printing press or, obviously, the internet. But what if I told you that one of the single greatest disruptions in information accessibility happened all the way back in the 12th century? It's true. Today, we're unpacking the mind-blowing story of a wealthy merchant who went toe-to-toe with one of the most massive institutional gatekeepers in human history, all just to bring knowledge directly to the people. So buckle up, because this is a classic underdog story. We're talking radical disruption, intense institutional backlash, and a legacy that literally changed the course of history.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a highly structured story for you today. We're going to start with the gatekeepers of knowledge, then we'll look at Waldo's radical disruption, explore a movement of equals, see how the empire strikes back, and finally, unpack a transformational legacy.
Section 1. The Gatekeepers of Knowledge. Imagine going somewhere every single week for guidance, but literally everything is spoken in a language you completely do not understand. Well, that was the actual reality for everyday folks in the early medieval church. All the scripture and those super rare sermons that were actually given were exclusively in Latin. The common people had absolutely no idea what was being said. And actually, get this, there's a wild, kind of funny piece of history here. You know the classic magic phrase, hocus pocus? It actually comes from this exact era. When the priest would say the Latin phrase, hocus est corpus meum, which means, this is my body, during the Mass, the uneducated congregation just misheard it as a magical incantation, hocus pocus. I mean, that perfectly illustrates just how alienating and completely confusing the Latin Mass was for the everyday person.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how massive that barrier to entry was. On one side, you have the 1%, the educated elite, the bishops, the archbishops. They understood Latin, and by keeping all the scriptures locked up in Latin, they totally controlled the flow of information. They maintained a status quo that was cloaked in secrecy. Then, on the other side, you've got the 99%, the common people, the laity. The church actually labeled anyone who couldn't read Latin as illiterate, even if they were perfectly fluent in their own native vernacular tongue, the everyday spoken language of their region. What this meant was that the deeply relevant, practical parts of the faith were literally locked away from the masses.
Section 2. Waldo's Radical Disruption.
Okay, so the year is 1172. There's this incredibly wealthy businessman in Lyon, France, named Valdez, or Waldo, and he decides he wants to actually study scripture for himself. So first, he reads it and feels heavily convicted, specifically by the Gospel of Matthew. Then, he uses his massive fortune to pay church officials to translate whole chunks of the New Testament into his native language, Provençal. And here's where it gets crazy. Acting on what he reads, he makes the radical choice to sell off all his possessions, every last bit. Finally, he takes to the streets. He starts preaching the gospel directly to his neighbors in their common tongue. Actually, scratch that. He didn't just preach. He completely bypassed the institutional middlemen to deliver the information straight to the consumer.
And we have to just pause here for a second to point out the deep historical irony of this whole situation. The founder of the Christian faith, Jesus, taught his disciples in the common, everyday Aramaic tongue. He used relatable parables. He spoke directly to the people, all to make faith accessible to everyone, no matter their education level. But fast forward over the centuries, and the medieval church had completely reverted to an exclusive formal Latin gatekeeper model. They essentially put up the exact same barriers that had been torn down 1,000 years earlier. So Waldo wasn't even inventing something new. He was just going back to that original, highly accessible method of speaking right to the people.
Section 3. A Movement of Equals.
And this brilliantly illustrates that Waldo's actions were absolutely not just a one-off event. It sparked a massive grassroots movement. His followers became known as the Poor of Lyon, or the Waldensians. Once those scriptures got translated into the local dialect of the Alpine region, which was known as Occitania, the floodgates just blew wide open. It wasn't just Waldo out there anymore. It was an entire society of itinerant preachers traveling around. By ripping that knowledge out of the hands of a select few, they directly challenged the church's strict internal legal framework, known as canon law.
Let's look at exactly how this movement created such radical equality, which of course the church saw as massive violations. First, they were preaching in the vernacular and letting common lay people preach. But perhaps the most striking, progressive thing they did for the 12th century was the elevation of the Waldensian sororities, the sisters. Guys, they empowered women to be preachers. They looked at the early texts and saw that women like Mary Magdalene were commissioned to spread the news. So sexual equality wasn't just some afterthought, it was baked right into their core values. And to top it all off, they embraced a vow of chosen missionary poverty,
which created an absolutely jarring visual and moral contrast in medieval society.
Think about it. On one hand, you have the Waldensian preachers, living in chosen poverty, deeply humble, taking a very literal interpretation of Jesus' teachings on service. And on the other hand, you have the Roman Catholic bishops of the era, delivering these highly allegorical sermons in a dead language, living lavish lifestyles, and hoarding extreme wealth. The public wasn't blind. They could totally see the difference. The humble, relatable message of the Waldensians took root in the hearts of the people in a way those wealthy bishops' decrees simply never could.
Section 4. The Empire Strikes Back. Now, the institution was absolutely not going to let this loss of control slide. The stakes were sky high, and the pushback escalated incredibly fast. In 1184, Waldo and his followers were officially excommunicated by Pope Lucius, banned from worship. But they kept right on preaching, arguing they had to obey God over human authority. So the church turns up the heat. By 1215, at the Fourth Lateran Council, they were officially declared heretics. That meant renounce your ways or face death. By 1231, a whole new order was created just to combat them, which eventually culminated in the 1250s with a completely ruthless, highly organized inquisition, complete with literal manuals on how to systematically hunt them down.
I want to focus on that 1231 milestone for just a second. The church literally created a new order, the Dominican order, or the preaching order. And initially, they weren't sent out to violently persecute the Waldensians. No, they were sent to out-debate them in public squares. The church leadership honestly thought they could win the public back by deploying these highly trained priests to flex the complex logic and reasoning of Catholic theology against these rogue grassroots street preachers.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Because this debate strategy, it was a complete and utter flop. Why? Well, the Dominican strategy relied on strident public debate and this rigid, cold, logical reasoning. The public looked at that and saw an approach completely lacking in compassion. Conversely, the Waldensian strategy was deeply rooted in orthodox belief, sure, but also basic human goodness, genuine love, and integrated compassion. The everyday folks looked at both sides and clearly chose the genuine love of the Waldensians over the punitive logic of the Dominicans. And tragically, it was only after completely failing to win hearts and minds in debate that the Dominicans were ordered to start the violent persecutions.
Section 5. A transformational legacy. But despite centuries of really ruthless persecution, this underdog story ends with a massive, undeniable institutional shift. The Catholic Church eventually realized that if they didn't adapt to what the laity actually needed, they'd just keep losing ground to these grassroots movements. The Waldensians literally forced the Roman Catholic Church to change its own rules. In the later Middle Ages, the Church adopted a new focus on preaching in the language of the people. They ultimately authorized orders like the Franciscans and, ironically, the Dominicans to finally start preaching in the vernacular.
So the crucial point is this. The Waldensian movement created an entirely new standard. Just by wanting to read and understand information for themselves, this small, marginalized group successfully democratized information access for all of Western Europe. They broke the monopoly of the Latin gatekeepers, completely transforming how the institution interacted with common people. We totally take for granted today that we can read and hear information in our own language, but we owe a huge debt to this 12th century disruption.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. The Waldensians recognize that hoarding knowledge is a tool of oppression, and sharing it, that is a profound act of empowerment. So I'll leave you with this question. If a 12th century merchant was willing to give up his wealth, his status, and ultimately risk his own life just to make knowledge accessible to his neighbors, what can we do today to take the democratization of information more seriously in our own lives? Think about it. Who are the gatekeepers today, and how can we ensure that vital knowledge stays in the hands of the people? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.